The rescue in the frozen wasteland. The cold wind howled through the barren wasteland, carrying snow and ice across the empty ground. The sky was dark, and the moon hid behind thick clouds. The forest nearby was silent, but the cold air felt heavy, with danger. In the middle of this frozen world stood a small, isolated cabin. Inside, a man named Jason sat by the fire, warming his hands and thinking about the quiet life he had chosen far away from the noisy cities and endless wars. Jason was used to solitude. He lived alone, away from other humans and aliens alike. His cabin was simple but strong, built from thick wood and metal plates to keep out the harsh weather. He knew this place well, but tonight something felt different. The wind seemed to carry a faint sound like a soft cry. He stood up and stepped outside, wrapping his coat tightly around him. The cold hit his face sharply, but he did not turn back. He listened carefully, his eyes scanning the snowy landscape. Then, barely visible through the blowing snow, he saw a small shape moving slowly toward his cabin. It was a little girl. She was no more than 7 or 8 years old. Her clothes were thin and torn, and she was shivering from cold and fear. Her hair was wet and stuck to her face, and her eyes were wide with terror. Jason's heart tightened. He knew no one should be out here alone, especially not a child. Without hesitation, Jason ran to the girl and wrapped her in his warm coat. She collapsed into his arms, trembling violently. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." He carried her inside the cabin and closed the door against the storm. The warmth of the fire slowly reached the girl's frozen skin. She shivered, less but did not speak. Jason sat beside her, offering a cup of warm water. She took it carefully, still watching him with big, scared eyes. "What's your name?" Jason asked gently. The girl did not answer. Instead, she looked down and pulled something from her pocket. A small metal device with strange symbols glowing faintly. It looked like alien technology. Jason's mind raced. Why would a little girl have this? Was she from some alien world, or was she running from someone? The girl's eyes flicked up, meeting Jason's. In that moment, a strange feeling passed between them. A silent plea for help, and a hint of a secret too big for words. Outside, the wind grew stronger. The snowstorm was not just weather. It was as if something dark was coming closer. Jason knew he could not turn the girl away. Whoever she was, she needed him. He covered her with a blanket and sat by her side through the long night. Sometimes she whispered in a language Jason could not understand. Words soft like a song, but full of pain. He wanted to ask more, but he knew patience was the only way. The night dragged on. Distant howls echoed through the forest. Sounds not quite animal, not quite machine. Jason's eyes never left the cabin door. At dawn, the storm began to ease. The first light revealed the frozen wasteland again, empty and silent. The girl slept peacefully for the first time since arriving. Jason stepped outside to look around. Footprints led to the cabin, but no sign of anyone else. No enemies yet. He thought about the future. This girl was no ordinary child. She was a key to something bigger. Maybe a war, maybe a hope. And Jason was now part of her story. He returned inside, sat beside her, and promised himself he would protect her, no matter the cost. But deep in the shadows of the wasteland, watchers stirred. Eyes glowed red in the dark. The hunt had just begun. The unexpected return days passed since the night Jason saved the shivering girl in the frozen wasteland. The little girl, whom he now called Lyra, stayed quiet most of the time, wrapped in thick blankets beside the warm fire. She didn't speak much, but her eyes told stories of fear, loss, and something deeper. Something Jason couldn't yet understand. The cabin felt different now. Once peaceful and lonely, it had a new weight, like a hidden storm waiting to break. Jason watched Lyra carefully every day, trying to learn more about her without frightening her. He knew her safety depended on him, but he also knew danger was not far behind. Then one morning, Jason woke up to find Lyra gone. The door to the cabin was open wide, letting in the cold morning air. Snowflakes drifted inside, settling softly on the floor. Panic rose inside Jason like a wildfire. He ran outside, calling her name, his voice breaking the silent frost. He searched the woods around the cabin, the frozen wasteland stretching endlessly beneath a gray sky, but there was no sign of Lyra. Jason felt empty. Had he failed? Was she lost forever in this cold, cruel world? Just as he was about to give up hope. Late that evening, a strange sound reached his ears, soft footsteps crunching on the snow. He hid behind a tree, heart pounding. A small figure appeared through the trees. It was Lyra, but she was not alone. Behind her came a woman, tall and pale, her face shadowed under a hood. Her eyes were dark, but tired, filled with worry and fear. Jason could tell she was the girl's mother by the way Lyra looked at her. The woman's steps were slow, cautious but determined. Something in her presence sent a chill deeper than the cold. Jason stepped out from his hiding place. "You came back," he said quietly. The woman looked at him, then at Lyra before nodding. "We had no choice," she said in broken English. "They follow us." Jason felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Who were they, and why were they chasing this small family? Inside the cabin, the woman removed her hood. Her face was marked with scars, signs of long battle and pain. She introduced herself as Ariel. Ariel spoke little, but her eyes held stories of suffering and courage. She told Jason about an alien empire that hunted them relentlessly, a ruthless force that saw her daughter as a key to their power. Lyra, it seemed, carried something inside her that could change the fate of many worlds. Jason listened, feeling the weight of the situation crushing him. He was just a simple man living far from the galaxy's wars. But now he was part of something far greater. That night, strange things began to happen. The cabin's old radio started to crackle with strange signals, voices speaking in languages Jason had never heard. Shadows moved beyond the trees, too fast to be animals. Ariel warned Jason to be ready. "They come for us," she said, "and they will not stop." Lyra sat quietly by the fire, her eyes glowing faintly under the flickering light. Jason noticed a small mark on her wrist, a symbol that seemed to pulse with energy. Curiosity and fear battled inside Jason. What was this power? Was it a blessing or a curse? As the night deepened, a loud explosion shook the ground nearby. Jason rushed outside with Ariel and Lyra, only to see a small group of alien scouts retreating into the dark woods. Jason's heart raced. The war had reached his door. He made a decision. He would protect this family, no matter the cost. But he also knew the fight was just beginning. Outside, the cold stars shone like silent witnesses to the rising storm, and somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered through the void. "Find them. The key must not escape." Jason stared into the night, gripping his makeshift weapon tightly. The chase had begun. Secrets behind the cabin door. The days after Ariel and Lyra's arrival passed slowly, but Jason could feel tension tightening like a noose around the cabin. The isolated walls, once a place of peace, now held secrets and fears too heavy to ignore. Ariel never left the cabin's small room, speaking only in whispers to Lyra. Jason watched them carefully, sensing there was something more beneath their quiet. One evening, while Ariel sat by the fire, Jason finally asked, "Why are they chasing you? What is Lyra to them?" Ariel's eyes darkened, her voice low and trembling. "My daughter. She carries the light of our people, a power the Empire fears. If they capture her, they will use her to control the galaxy." Jason's mind raced. The light of their people. What did it mean? Ariel pulled a small crystal from beneath her cloak, glowing softly in the dim light. "This is the last hope," she said. "But it needs a guardian." Lyra, sitting nearby, touched the crystal with a delicate finger. Suddenly, a wave of energy pulsed through the cabin, making the walls hum softly. Jason felt something inside him awaken, a connection he could not explain. That night, the cabin was no longer just a shelter. It was a battlefield waiting to happen. Jason started training, every day, learning to use simple weapons, preparing for the inevitable attack. Ariel taught him to read the alien signals on their broken radio, while Lyra's mysterious power grew stronger. But danger was closer than ever. One cold night, the cabin door shook violently. Shadows appeared outside, moving fast and silent like ghosts. Jason grabbed his weapon and stood in front of the cabin, ready. A sudden flash of light blinded him. When he could see again, a tall figure stood at the door, a stranger dressed in black armor with glowing red eyes. "I am Kai." "The stranger said, voice cold like ice. "The Empire sent me to take the girl." Ariel stepped forward, fearless despite the threat. "You will not have her." A fierce battle erupted. Kai's power was strong, but Jason's determination was stronger. He fought with every breath, protecting the girl who had no voice but held the galaxy's fate. In the chaos, Lyra touched Jason's arm. A warm light spread from her hand, healing his wounds and giving him strength. Kai fell back, eyes burning with fury. "This is not over," he hissed before vanishing into the night. After the fight, Jason knew their time was running out. The Empire would return, stronger and more dangerous. Ariel revealed more secrets. Lyra's power was tied to an ancient prophecy, one that spoke of a human and an alien child who would change everything. Jason felt the weight of this destiny pressing down on him. He was no hero, just a man who had chosen to help a scared girl. But now he was part of a story bigger than he had ever imagined. As the stars blinked coldly outside, Jason looked at Lyra and Ariel. "We fight together," he said. "No matter what comes," and somewhere, far beyond the wasteland, the Empire's shadow stretched longer, waiting to strike. The alien Empire's shadow. The days after Kai's attack passed with tense silence. Jason, Ariel, and Lyra knew their lives were on the edge of a knife. The cabin that once promised safety now felt like a trap, surrounded by invisible dangers. Jason looked out at the frozen wasteland one cold morning, watching dark shapes move in the far distance. Alien ships, sleek and deadly, patrolled the skies. The Empire had found them. Ariel's face was hard and determined. "They want Lyra," she said, "not just for her power, but to break our will." She told Jason stories of the Empire's cruelty, how entire worlds were enslaved, how hope was crushed beneath their boots. Lyra's light was a threat to everything they built. Capturing her meant controlling that power forever. Jason felt a fire grow inside him. He was no soldier, but he would fight. Not for glory, but for the little girl who trusted him, and the mother who sacrificed everything to protect her. They began to prepare. The cabin's defenses were strengthened. Traps were set around the trees. Jason taught Lyra and Ariel how to use the simple weapons he had. Ariel showed Jason strange alien symbols that could create shields and illusions, ancient technology long forgotten. At night, Jason stayed awake listening to the forest's whispers, waiting for the enemy. One evening, Lyra came to him quietly, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and hope. "I want to try," she said softly. She explained she could use her power to send a message, a secret call for help, to any ally willing to fight the Empire. Jason hesitated. "It's dangerous." "More dangerous to stay silent," Lyra replied. That night, they gathered around the glowing crystal. Lyra placed her hands on it, and the room filled with a bright light. Waves of energy pulsed out into the cold sky. Hours later, a distant signal returned, a faint reply filled with hope. But before they could rejoice, a violent tremor shook the ground. The Empire was coming. Outside, the shadows grew larger, hundreds of soldiers armored and merciless advancing through the snow. Jason stood tall, weapon in hand, heart pounding but unbroken. Ariel whispered, "Fight for hope. Fight for freedom." As the first enemy stepped into the clearing, Lyra's light exploded outward in a dazzling burst, blinding friend and foe alike. The battle had begun. Jason fought like a man with nothing to lose. Each strike was fueled by his promise to protect the girl and her mother. Ariel's shields flickered but held strong. Lyra's power was wild but fierce, lighting the night like a storm. But the Empire was relentless. Kai appeared again. this time leading the charge. His red eyes locked onto Jason, hatred burning deep. "You cannot stop the Empire," Kai hissed. "Maybe not," Jason replied, "but I won't let you take her." The clash between them was fierce, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. In the chaos, Jason saw something that chilled him, a dark machine rising behind the Empire's soldiers, a weapon designed to destroy everything in its path. He knew the fight was more than survival. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. As dawn broke over the frozen wasteland, Jason, Ariel, and Lyra stood battered but unbroken. The Empire's shadow had fallen, but the light of hope burned brighter than ever. Bond of trust and power. After the brutal battle with the Empire's forces, the cabin lay scarred but still standing against the endless cold. Jason, Ariel, and Lyra were tired, wounded, but alive. The fight had changed them all, no longer strangers, but a small family bound by survival and trust. Jason looked at Lyra with new eyes. The little girl was not just a frightened child anymore. Her powers, strange and mysterious, were growing stronger every day. She could light the darkest night and heal wounds with a touch. But the power came with a price. Lyra often gasped, in pain after using it, as if her body and soul were stretched too thin. Ariel stayed close to her daughter, whispering words in an ancient alien language, trying to soothe the growing storm inside Lyra. Jason felt helpless but knew he had to learn more. One evening, Ariel revealed the truth behind Lyra's gift. "Our people were guardians of light," she said quietly, "keepers of balance in the galaxy. Lyra's power is the last of this light, the hope to restore what the Empire destroyed." Jason felt the weight of this secret press upon him. He was just a man from Earth, but now the fate of entire worlds rested on the fragile shoulders of this small alien girl, and on his promise to protect her. As days turned to weeks, the bond between them grew stronger. Jason taught Lyra and Ariel how to defend themselves with simple weapons and strategy. Ariel shared forgotten knowledge of alien technology, revealing hidden strengths in the cabin's defenses. One night, Lyra reached out and touched Jason's hand. A warm light spread from her palm, washing over him like a shield. Jason realized their connection was deeper than simple friendship. It was a bond of power and trust, linking their souls. But this bond did not go unnoticed. From the shadows beyond, the forest, new enemies watched and waited. The Empire had sent hunters, ruthless killers skilled in tracking the light. A silent alarm sounded through the cabin's hidden sensors. Ariel's face turned pale. "They're coming again," she whispered. This time the attack was different. No soldiers, only silent figures moving like shadows, striking fast and deadly. Jason, Ariel, and Lyra fought side by side. Lyra's light flared brightly, pushing the attackers back. Jason's strength and courage kept them alive, while Ariel's knowledge created barriers that shielded them from harm. In the heat of battle, Jason saw Lyra struggle. Her light was fading, her strength draining. He took her in his arms, whispering promises he hoped to keep. "You're not alone," he said. "We fight together." After the fight, the family knew they couldn't stay hidden much longer. The Empire's reach was growing and their enemies were relentless. Ariel revealed a risky plan: to send Lyra to an ancient sanctuary, a place of power protected by old magic and alien technology. It was their last hope to keep her safe. Jason's heart ached at the thought of letting Lyra go, but he understood. Protecting her was more important than anything. That night, under a sky filled with cold stars, they prepared for the journey. The bond of trust and power between them was their greatest weapon, and no empire, no matter how strong, could break it. The siege of the isolated cabin, the cold air was thick with tension. The frozen wasteland around the cabin felt alive with danger, as if the very ground whispered warnings of the coming storm. Jason, Ariel, and Lyra moved quickly, preparing for the battle they knew was inevitable. Ariel studied ancient maps and symbols, searching for weaknesses in the Empire's strategy. Lyra, though still fragile, trained harder than ever, pushing her powers beyond limits no child should face. Jason fortified the cabin's defenses, building traps, barricades, and alarms that could alert them to the slightest movement in the snow. They knew the Empire would come again, and this time with more force. Then, one bitter night, the sky lit up with the glowing engines of a massive fleet. Ships descended from the dark clouds like vultures, their weapons aimed at the small cabin, standing defiantly in the wasteland. The siege had begun. Jason stood at the cabin's entrance, his breath visible in the icy air. Weapon ready, Ariel whispered ancient words, activating the cabin's hidden defenses. Lyra's eyes shone with fierce determination, the glowing symbol on her wrist pulsing like a heartbeat. The first wave of soldiers stormed forward, armored, ruthless, and relentless. They crashed against the cabin's shields, which flickered but held firm. Jason fought with every ounce of strength, his simple weapons striking true. Ariel's shields pulsed with energy, blocking blasts that could tear through steel. Lyra's light flared bright, sending waves of energy that knocked enemies back like a storm. But the Empire's forces were too many. Amid the chaos, Jason saw Kai leading a squad of elite soldiers, his red eyes burning with hate. Kai's power had grown stronger and his attacks were faster, deadlier. "You cannot win, human," Kai sneered. "The Empire will claim her. Not while I breathe," Jason growled, charging at Kai. Their battle shook the ground, a clash of wills as much as weapons. Jason's determination was unbreakable, but Kai's skill and power were terrifying. Outside the fight, Ariel and Lyra worked to protect the cabin's core, the glowing crystal that held the hope of their people. Lyra's energy began to wane, the cost of the battle heavy on her young body. Jason knew time was running out. With a final roar, he pushed Kai back, buying Ariel and Lyra precious moments. "Run," he shouted. "Take the crystal and go." Ariel hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, we fight together." "Not this time," Jason said firmly. "Your fight is to survive." Reluctantly, Ariel took Lyra's hand, and they disappeared into the thick forest, the crystal glowing softly in their grip. Jason stayed behind, facing the relentless tide of soldiers. As the Empire's forces closed in, Jason raised his weapon one last time, ready to defend the cabin and the light of hope, until the very end. The stars above watched silently, bearing witness to a battle that would echo through the galaxy forever. "Would you like me to continue with the final part 7? 4.1 Miniu said, "Start with part 7. More unique and lengthy and more interesting and more suspense and more power." Full story lines ChatGPT said, "Here's part 7. The powerful, unique, and suspenseful conclusion to your story, written in simple, clear English third-person style and designed to keep your audience riveted until the very end. Part 7. New Dawn, New Hope." The wasteland was silent now. The fierce battle had ended, leaving the cabin battered but still standing against the endless cold. Jason stood alone among the ruins, his body aching from wounds, his heart heavy with loss and hope. Ariel and Lyra were gone, vanished into the forest with the glowing crystal, the last hope of their people. Jason had stayed behind to hold the line, buying them time to escape the Empire's crushing grasp. The Empire's shadow had receded for now, but Jason knew this was only the beginning. As dawn broke over the frozen horizon, light spilled across the wasteland like a promise. Jason's thoughts raced. The fight had changed everything. A simple man from Earth was now part of an ancient prophecy, tied to the fate of galaxies. But he was not alone. From the depths of the forest, the faint sound of footsteps approached. Jason tensed, weapon ready. But it was not an enemy. A group of warriors emerged, alien and human, united by the same hope, to fight the Empire's darkness and protect the light Lyra carried. Ariel stepped forward, stronger than before, holding Lyra close. The crystal's glow pulsed with renewed energy. "This is our new dawn," Ariel said, her voice steady and fierce. "The Empire will fall." Jason lowered his weapon, relief flooding him. Together they formed a bond unbreakable, a family forged in fire and battle. Lyra smiled, her eyes bright with promise. "We fight for freedom," she whispered. The warriors rallied around them, ready to rise against the Empire. The isolated cabin had become a beacon, a symbol of hope in a galaxy shadowed by fear. Jason looked up at the sky, the cold stars now shining with new light. Their journey was far from over, but together, they would face whatever came. Because sometimes even the smallest light can shine brightest in the darkest night. And in that light was the future of the galaxy.